My best friend Nate and I go on a week-long camping trip every summer. Just the two of us, no cell service, no distractions, just the woods and a fire. It's something we've done since college, and it's kind of sacred now. This year, we chose a patch of forest in the Pacific Northwest, a spot we found through a backpacking forum. Maybe 30 yards out, yellowish, almost like animal eyes reflecting firelight. Supposedly under trafficked, quiet, and off the beaten path. Exactly what we were looking for. We hiked out about 5 miles from the nearest trailhead and set up camp beside a small, sluggish creek. The air was cool, thick with pine and moss, and everything felt exactly as it should. Peaceful, removed. We got the fire going, drank a few beers, and talked until the trees around us were nothing but black columns against the sky. He was already half asleep in his hammock. I figured he was probably right. They didn't move. I couldn't even make out a shape behind them. Just eyes. That first night, as we were winding down, I noticed them 2 faint, round glows in the trees across the creek. But this time, they were closer. Just a few feet beyond the edge of the creek now. The fire was between us and them. No breathing, no swaying, no reflection from the fire. Just light, as if they were lit from within. Probably a deer, Nate mumbled when I pointed them out. I stared at them for another 10 minutes before convincing myself it was nothing. Made excuses not to leave, but didn't feel right staying either. Around midday, we heard something moving through the trees behind us, slow, deliberate crunching of leaves and twigs. But when we turned, nothing was there. I tried taking a photo, but nothing showed up. Like my body knew before my mind could process it. Just blackness. I kept the fire going as long as I could, feeding it with everything we had. Even after the firewood ran out, I broke branches off nearby trees. But the next night, they were back. The forest seemed quieter, like everything was holding its breath. Even during the day, I noticed the absence of bird calls, of the usual rustling in the brush. We decided not to hike that day. The beam caught the trees in a bit of mist, but whatever those eyes belonged to was invisible. Just stayed close to camp, trying not to talk about the fact that the moment the sun dipped low, we both knew what we'd see. Nothing. I went back to find the exact location because I wanted to warn people. Nate and I don't talk about it. Not really. We haven't gone camping since. I'll look out. We sat in silence, waiting, not daring to move. When the sun came up, we broke camp in under 15 minutes. Neither of us ate, neither of us spoke. Still, the glow remained unaffected by the light, which made no sense. Same spot, same distance, same stillness, no movement, no blinking. Didn't stop once. When we got to the car, we tossed our gear in the trunk and drove. I remember looking back in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see something following us, but there was nothing. Nate came over, annoyed, until he saw them too. Every so often, I'd glance up and see those eyes. Still there, still watching. He squinted for a long time, then muttered, "That's not an animal. Animals don't do that." This time, I tried shining my flashlight toward them. I called out, "Hey, anyone there?" But there was no response. We stayed by the fire longer than usual that night, neither of us saying much. By the third night, things started to feel wrong. Not when they were now at eye level, and still completely still. And we did. Same eyes, same place. For protection, I couldn't pretend it was an animal anymore. I didn't sleep at all that night. Every time I looked, they were there. One just left of the old spot. One directly behind our tents. I felt something cold wash over me. By morning, they were gone. But Nate and I didn't speak much that day. We packed slowly. That evening, we built the fire big. Larger than we usually would, not for warmth, and the eyes came back. This time, there were 4. 2 sets. We didn't sleep. Nate sat with a hatchet in his lap. At around 4 a.m., the second set of eyes vanished. Then the original pair. We hiked the 5 miles out in under 2 hours. That was 2 years ago, but here's the part that still eats at me. A few months after that trip, I found the forum post where we'd first heard about that spot. But the thread was gone, deleted. The user who posted it had no profile anymore, no activity, no history, like it never existed. And sometimes, not often, but sometimes on quiet nights, I'll wake up and feel like something's watching me through the window. And for just a second, I swear, I see those eyes. I don't know what's more disturbing, the screams we heard in the woods that night, or the fact that there was no way they could have come from where we heard them. It was late September when 4 of us set out for an end-of-season backpacking trip. Me, my girlfriend Claire, her brother Sean, and our friend Lucas. The trail wasn't maintained, but Sean had downloaded a few GPS maps from an old hiking blog. He said it was mostly used by hunters, which meant we'd have the entire place to ourselves. We wanted one last real hike before winter set in, and Sean had picked out a remote trail in the Adirondacks that he swore was criminally underrated. The trail narrowed to the point where we were practically single file. The trees got denser, darker, and quieter. Like, too quiet. Even the birds had stopped. I didn't say anything at first because I didn't want to be that guy. But after another half mile, Claire spoke up. Just the sound of our own breathing and the occasional creak of a tree in the wind. Lucas tried to laugh it off. Maybe we were entering a horror movie zone, but nobody laughed with him this time. The plan was to hike in about 10 miles, set up camp near a secluded lake, and spend 2 nights completely off the grid. For the first few hours, it was everything we'd hoped for, but we hadn't seen any water since lunch. The tree line looked different too, and there was no sign of the trail continuing from the clearing, even though the GPS insisted we were right on it. Crisp air, rustling trees, the crunch of leaves under our boots. The forest was dense, but not overwhelming sunlight, still filtered through in places, and we were in high spirits. Claire kept taking pictures. Lucas kept making dumb jokes about bears. It felt good. Echoing from somewhere deeper in the forest. Not close, but not far either. And definitely not an animal. We all froze. But sometime around mile 7, the woods started to change. I noticed it first. Do you guys hear that? We all stopped. Sean turned, annoyed. Hear what? That area it came from? It's just blank. That's the thing, she said. I don't hear anything. Sad maybe someone got lost or hurt. But something in my gut said no. I told him it didn't feel right. Lucas backed me up, and so did Claire. Still, the screams kept coming. Always from the same general direction, always just a little closer. And she was right, no birds, no insects. We pressed on. Around 4:30, we found a clearing and decided to take a short break before the final push to the lake. Every direction looked the same tall trees, endless brush, no landmarks. We were completely turned around. Like, whoever was making it wasn't just in pain. They were trying to sound human and almost getting it right. The clearing was strange oval-shaped, completely surrounded by tall pine trees that leaned inward like they were trying to block something out. There were no signs of animals, no tracks, no scat. Just hard-packed dirt and the remains of an old fire ring. Not together, just blindly in different directions. I don't remember what I was thinking. I just remember crashing through the woods, branches clawing at my face, lungs burning, a whisper, my own name. Eventually I heard footsteps slow, heavy, circling me in the brush. I didn't move, didn't breathe. And then, from just beyond the trees, I heard a voice. I ran again until I finally saw firelight through the trees. I didn't stop until I tripped and landed hard on a patch of soft ground. Because now it wasn't just screams in the woods. Find a different spot to set up camp or even head back if we had to. But as we packed up, something else happened. He'd found the clearing again and managed to start a fire. Claire and Lucas showed up not long after. All of us were scratched up, shaken, and silent, all our compasses, spinning aimlessly. Like magnets were messing with them. Sean pulled out the GPS. That's when we hit our first real problem. Then Claire checked her phone, no signal either, not even for offline maps. According to the GPS, we should have crossed a creek 10 minutes earlier. Same with Lucas. The map didn't match what we were seeing. Sean muttered something about map errors and started walking the perimeter, looking for the path again. That's when we heard it. Just sat by the fire, gripping our gear, waiting for the sky to lighten. A scream. It was like the forest had released us. There's nothing out here, he said. No trails, no campsites, no shelters. High-pitched, sharp, human. Did you hear that? Claire whispered. No one answered. And then it came again. Louder this time. Desperate. Painful. Lucas stood up slowly. What the hell was that? Sean looked back at the GPS. Claire grabbed my arm. So, who the hell is screaming? None of us had an answer. Another scream. Closer now. It was the kind of sound that makes your skin crawl, not just because of how loud it was, but because there was something unnatural about it. Sean wanted to go check it out. We decided to backtrack. The GPS stopped working. Just froze on one screen. No signal, no response. That's when I really started to panic. Like laughter mixed with pain. One moment they were far. The next they sounded like they were just behind the next tree. Something didn't want us to find our way out. We moved quickly, retracing our steps the way we thought we came, but nothing looked familiar anymore. The trail was gone, and the screams, they started coming from multiple directions. Shorter now, harsher. We ran. The forest was silent again, dead quiet. I couldn't even hear the others. That was the worst part. I stayed there for what felt like hours, but it was my voice that broke me. It was Sean. We didn't talk that night, didn't sleep. When it finally did, we hiked out. It took all day, but we eventually found the main trail again. A week later, Sean checked again. The place where we heard the screams, still not on any map. Just empty forest. But I don't think it was ever empty. There was nothing around us for miles, just forest, sky, and silence. So why did our cooler move 2 feet overnight? And why was there a handprint on our tent? My girlfriend Dana and I booked a weekend camping trip at a state park in Vermont. Remote, off-grid, and only accessible by a 2-mile hiking trail. Exactly the kind of peaceful escape we needed after months of city noise and stress. There was a fire ring, a patch of level ground for the tent, and a view of the lake through the trees. It felt perfect. The site was reservation only, and we had it booked months in advance. That weird goosebump kind of awareness that something's not right. I sat up slowly and listened. There was no wind, no wildlife sounds beyond the occasional owl, just stillness. No other sites nearby, no cell service. Just us, the trees, and the quiet. We arrived late Friday afternoon. The air smelled like pine and wet earth. The first evening was uneventful. We pitched the tent, made a fire, cooked dinner, and watched the stars come out one by one. Probably just too much true crime and coffee. Sometime in the middle of the night, I woke up. Not to a noise, but to a feeling. Nothing. Not dirt, not sap a handprint. Ain't, but clearly there, human-sized. Right where our heads would have been when we were sleeping. But when I stepped out of the tent, it was farther away. But in the end, we chalked it up to nerves. Maybe someone had wandered through earlier in the day. Maybe the wind dragged the cooler. Maybe the handprint had been there all along. Closer to the edge of the woods, at least 2 feet from where it had been. I checked for animal prints, but the ground was dry and undisturbed. I kept the fire going as long as I could, sitting outside the tent with a flashlight in my lap. She's obsessive about bugs, but now it was open, and inside was a folded scrap of paper. Nothing happened. No noises, no movement. The lid was still sealed. Nothing had gotten in. Dana was still asleep beside me. I could hear the faint ripple of water from the lake. No twigs snapping, no footsteps. I almost laughed at myself. But in the morning, things started to feel off. But they were close enough to touch our tent while we slept. The first thing I noticed was the cooler. We had left it next to the fire ring, maybe 3 feet from where we'd been sitting. They said no one else had a reservation near us. No staff had been out that way. And the trail cameras at the entrance had only picked up 2 people going in that weekend, me and Dana. Did you move the cooler? I asked Dana. She looked at me confused. No, why would I? Threw our gear together, didn't eat, didn't even check to make sure we packed everything. We just left. Hiked out fast, barely talked. I didn't have an answer. That's when I noticed something else. There was a smudge on the side of the tent. My stomach sank. We looked around. No tracks, no trash disturbed. Everything else exactly as we'd left it. We should have left then. We talked about it. We stayed. The second night, we didn't sleep much. But when we woke up the next morning, Dana's bag was unzipped. She always zips it shut. Every time. No envelope, no markings. Just a piece of notebook paper, torn at the edge. Written jagged block letters, it said, "You weren't supposed to see me," that was it. We left within 10 minutes. When we reached the car and finally had cell service, we called the ranger station. I don't know who or what was out there with us, and whoever they were, they didn't want to be seen.
I zipped up the tent for the night, certain we were alone. By morning, someone had been through our things without making a sound. My girlfriend Rachel and I went camping last summer in northern Michigan, near the edge of Hiawatha National Forest. It was a secluded site we had to reserve in advance. One of those spots you hike 1.5 miles to, surrounded by woods with a view of the lake. We chose it because it was supposed to be quiet, isolated, and private. The whole area was beautiful. We got there in the early afternoon, unloaded our gear, and started setting up. But right away, something felt off. It wasn't anything obvious, no. Weird noises or anything like that. It was just this strange sensation, like we were arriving somewhere we weren't supposed to be. Rachel said the same thing. She even joked, "What if someone's already living out here?" I laughed it off. In hindsight, I shouldn't have. We brushed it off, made our own fire closer to the tent, and cooked dinner. The woods around us were silent, the kind of silence that makes every twig snap sound 10 times louder. We noticed the first sign when we were unpacking. There was a ring of stones set up behind a cluster of trees about 20 feet from our tent pad. It wasn't the fire pit, was too far from the main area and way too small. But inside the stones were ashes, fresh ones. It's like gray and loose, still smelling faintly of smoke. Just one step, and then silence. I waited for what felt like forever before lying back down. I didn't wake Rachel. I just stared at the tent wall until dawn. That bothered me. But they were at different angles than we'd left them. Rachel noticed it immediately. "Did you move these? We were the only ones on this site, and the reservation system only allowed 1 party per location." I know how that sounds, but that's the only way I can describe it. I sat up slowly, listened. The woods were dead quiet. I pulled up the confirmation on my phone. Yep, Site 17, reserved for Friday through Sunday. We were supposed to be alone, folded in half, no envelope, notebook paper. On it, in thick, uneven block letters, it read, "Still, the fact that the ashes were fresh didn't sit right." It hadn't rained in a few days, so they couldn't have been that old. Rachel thought maybe a hiker had squatted for a night before we got there. Not legal, but possible, zipping it fully from the inside before we went to sleep. We should have packed up and gone right then. But we didn't. But the part that really made my skin crawl was that it was inside the backpack. Part of me wants to throw it away, but part of me can't. It's like proof that it happened, that we weren't crazy. She kept saying, "We locked the tent. We locked the tent." That meant someone unzipped it, then carefully put everything back, hoping we wouldn't notice. That night around 1 a.m. I woke up to something soft, not a noise, more like a vibration or presence. Then I heard it. A single, deliberate footstep outside the tent. They took our statement, but they said there was no sign of anyone else in that area. No footprints, no gear, no trace of another person. We just packed everything up as fast as we could. It didn't feel like we were alone anymore, not even a little. Twigs cracking, footsteps that would stop when we stopped. I turned around more times than I can count, but I never saw anyone. It felt like something was watching us from just beyond the trees, waiting for us to notice again. I froze, waited, nothing. No more movement, no voices, no animal sounds. When we got up the next morning, I was sure I'd dreamed it. We stepped outside and everything looked the same, except it wasn't. Our camp chairs had been moved. not farm maybe 2 feet to the side. Audit. I checked our food bin. It was closed. Our bags were zipped, nothing obviously missing. But then I found the worst part. Rachel's backpack unzipped. Inside, right on top of her clothes, was a note. "You weren't supposed to see me." That was it. No signature. No clue who wrote it. Rachel went pale when she saw it. I remembered doing it. Didn't even talk about staying. As we hiked back, I kept hearing things behind us. Once we made it back to the car, we reported everything to the park rangers, but they didn't check that second fire ring. And they didn't see the note. I still have it, by the way, folded up in a drawer at home, that someone was already living at our campsite, and they really didn't want to be found.
He said he was just checking on us, but his uniform didn't have a name tag and his flashlight never turned on. 2 summers ago, 3 friends and I went camping in Shenandoah National Park. We picked a primitive backcountry site, no hookups, no neighbors, just a marked clearing 2 miles off the main trail. We got our permit, logged our route with the rangers at the visitor center, and started our hike in. We hiked a loop around the nearby ridge, made a fire, roasted hot dogs, the usual. Around 10:30, we decided to call it a night. The woods around us were quiet, no owls, no bugs, no wind. Just dead still. It was perfect weather, late June. Warm days, cool nights. Everything felt calm and peaceful. Not scared exactly, but wired. The kind of restless feeling you get when your brain knows something's wrong before you do. Until the second night. That day had been uneventful. I remember zipping up the tent and feeling strangely alert. About an hour later, just as I was starting to doze off, I heard someone walking toward the campsite. Slow, deliberate steps on dry leaves. I sat up immediately. "Guys, someone's coming." We all listened. We hadn't seen a single ranger out there since we started. It was well after dark, and this guy hadn't used a flashlight, not even on the trail. I asked, "What do you mean?" The footsteps got closer, crunching steadily until we heard them stop maybe 20 feet from the tent. Then a voice. "They don't tell you everything. Safer that way." Didn't come back. Heart pounding. Shouldn't we have heard about that from the visitor center? "Evening, folks. Park Ranger James. Just doing a check-in." His voice was low and calm, but something about it made my stomach twist. I unzipped the tent enough to peek out. He could see us. Don't follow any voices. I don't think that guy was a real ranger. 4 sleeping bags laid out around the tent. We hiked out early. We asked about Ranger James, gave a description. The woman behind the desk frowned. "If someone approached your site at night out there, you should report that immediately." We were supposed to stay another night, but none of us wanted to. Describe the uniform, his face, everything we could remember. 4 backpacks. 4 of us sitting upright. We filed a report with local authorities, even gave them GPS coordinates of our site. But we never heard back. He walked into the woods. No flashlight, no radio chatter. Just melted into the dark like he'd never been there. Why would he ask that? Just wanted to make sure nobody was off the trail. We've had incidents. People going missing. I said quickly. There was a man standing by the fire ring, hands behind his back. Don't answer, like he was trying to memorize us. Then turned toward the trees. Tan uniform, ranger hat. But the weird thing was, his uniform looked off. It didn't reflect light the way modern ranger gear usually does. And his shirt, no patches, no nameplate, no radio, just blank. My buddy Zach called out, "Everything okay, sir?" The man smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Missing? He paused a little too long. Wandered off. Not here. Not this season. I was fully awake now. The man's smile faded. Then he cocked his head and asked, "How many of you are out here?" It said, "That stopped me cold." When I looked it up online, I found a thread on an old camping forum. The title was "Creepy Ranger in Shenandoah." Several people had posted a man matching the same description plain uniform. No flashlight, odd questions, dating back years. Always at night. Always when people were isolated. And always, they said, he walked off into the woods without a sound. We're all accounted for. He nodded slowly. Stick close to camp tonight. And with that, we sat in silence for a long time. Then Zach muttered, "First thing in the morning at the visitor center, There's no James on staff. We pressed her. She looked disturbed. So we did. Later, one post from 2009 chilled me the most. If he asks how many of you there are, he's not counting who's there. He's checking to see who'd be missed. The first whistle sounded like a person. The last one came from right outside my tent, and it was my whistle. I went camping alone last fall in Oregon, deep in a forest about 30 miles from the nearest town. It wasn't an official campsite, just a flat stretch of ground off an old logging road that a friend had recommended. I brought a small tent, my hiking gear, a good flashlight, and a portable stove. No cell signal, of course, but I'd told a buddy my exact GPS coordinates before heading out. I must have been drifting in and out of sleep when I heard it. Quiet, no traffic, and perfect for stargazing. The temperature dropped quickly after dark, and by 9 p.m., I was zipped up in my sleeping bag inside the tent, listening to the sounds of the forest. Not far. My first thought was hunter, hiker. I had done solo trips before. I liked the solitude, the peace of being off-grid for a night or two. Everything was normal at first. I set up camp, hiked a bit before sunset, and made dinner by the fire. It was a cold, quiet night. No wind, just the occasional rustle of branches far off. A whistle. 2 short bursts. Sharp. Human. It came from somewhere in the trees behind my tent. Maybe 50 feet out. But that didn't make sense. Nobody should have been out here. There were no other cars at the trailhead when I arrived. The forest was dead quiet now. No crickets. No rustling. Just uneasy. Just stillness. Same pattern too, quick bursts. I figured maybe it was someone lost or trying to signal help. I waited. No lights, no tents. And the whistle sounded too intentional, like it was aimed directly at me. So, like an idiot, I whistled back. Still 2 short bursts, but now it was to my left, maybe 20 feet out. Too close, a little closer. About 10 seconds later, it came again. 2 whistles, still trying to be rational. I unzipped the tent, poked my head out, and shined my flashlight toward the trees. Nothing. I called out, "Hey, you alright?" Whatever is out there knew where I was, and it was mimicking me, mocking me. I didn't dare move or make a noise. Silence. The zipper of the tent tugged slightly. I was afraid that if I did, I'd see someone crouched just beyond the fabric. I waited a bit, scanned the area, then zipped the tent back up. I wasn't scared yet. Then another whistle. This time from a different direction. I didn't respond. I just lay there, heart pounding, every muscle tense. And then it whistled again. But this time it mimicked me. I heard crashing through the underbrush, fast and clumsy. I grabbed my knife and flashlight, didn't make a sound. Just stayed completely still. I jumped out with my flashlight, sweeping the trees. But there was nothing. Not even tracks the next morning. Just forest. Undisturbed. Same tone. Same exact rhythm. Only it wasn't perfect, it was off, like someone trying to copy a sound without fully understanding how. It was enough to finally spike my fear. Some say it's people playing tricks. Others blame animals. But some say it's something older than people. Something that watches. Another minute passed. Hiked the 2 miles out in near silence, checking behind me every 30 seconds. Then came my whistle again, this time from directly in front of the tent. I didn't even hear footsteps. It was just there. Just a soft pull, like someone testing it. I sat frozen, holding my breath. After what felt like forever, I heard twigs snap. Not footsteps, more like something shifting, circling the tent. I didn't turn on the flashlight, and then... not opened. I couldn't move. Then I heard a sound that still makes my skin crawl to this day. A breath. Just one slow inhale, inches from the tent wall, followed by a low, almost garbled whisper, "Not you." I snapped. I yelled just a raw, panicked noise and kicked the wall of the tent. Whoever it was bolted. I packed up in record time, didn't eat, didn't look back. I never saw anyone. Later, I searched online for similar stories. Turns out, there are a lot of accounts of people hearing whistles in the woods, especially when they're alone. Something that mimics. Whatever it was, it knew I was there. And when I answered it, it came looking. The journal was still warm when I picked it up, like the fire hadn't gone out all the way. But there were no embers and no one else had been there in days. This happened last year when I went camping with my girlfriend, Abby, and two of our friends, Marcus and Jen. We were in upstate New York, in a place called Wolf Pine Ridge State Land, with some primitive campsites spaced miles apart. No bathrooms, no running water, just a marked off circle for your tent and a fire pit made of stones. We've been there once before, but this time we hiked in deeper to a spot marked Site 9. The ranger at the trailhead told us hardly anyone ever used that one too far out. The fire pit was full of ash, charred logs still resting across the top, half collapsed. We cleared it out and started unpacking, not on any of the printed maps anymore. That should have been our first warning. The hike in was long but beautiful. When we got there, it looked like no one had camped there for months. That's when I saw it wedged beneath the blackened logs. Something brown torn. I pulled it out, but it hadn't been in the fire long. The middle was intact. It looked ... recent. The entries got worse. More desperate. Some entries were just scribbles, others were full paragraphs. I remember one line on the first readable page. Too recent for a site that supposedly hadn't been used in months. A small journal. The cover was burnt on the edges, the pages stuck together with soot and ash. I opened it. Jen thought it was part of some horror scavenger hunt or an art project. The handwriting was shaky and cramped. Dozens of pages filled with messy, paranoid rambling. It keeps walking past the tent, but when I unzip it, there's nothing there. We all thought it was a joke, some teenager messing around. But the deeper I read, the more uneasy I felt. Not ours. Somewhere off to the side. I sat up, listening. Abby was asleep next to me, breathing slow. No one else was talking. I haven't slept in 2 nights. I buried the lighter so I wouldn't see the flame. Breathing. Heavy and wet, just outside the nylon. I wanted to unzip the tent and shine my light, but something told me not to. Not this time. I stopped using my flashlight. It doesn't like light. Then we got to the last page. Half burned, the bottom corners blackened and flaking off. One sentence scrawled across the center. None of us talked about it much, but we all stuck close together. Didn't go far from camp. He looked exhausted. Said he'd woken up to heard what sounded like whispering from the trees. Thought it was us messing with him. I know it's watching me while I sleep. Abby was creeped out. She told me to toss it. I unzipped and whispered, "You good?" Said it was probably worth something, or at least cool to show people. But Marcus wanted to keep it. He trailed off and looked toward the trees. That night, things got weird. Around 2 a.m., I woke up to what I thought was the sound of a zipper. Then came footsteps, slow, deliberate crunching of leaves. They circled the tent, not running. Pacing, I held my breath. The footsteps stopped. Then I heard something soft. Even though I know I left it in the fire pit, we didn't mention the journal. After about a minute, the sound faded back into the woods. In the morning, I asked Marcus if he'd heard anything. We checked around the site. No prints, no trash, no signs of animals, just quiet woods. That day, the woods felt different. Like we were being watched. Around 1:30 a.m., I heard him pacing outside the tents. That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. He turned. His face was pale. "It's out there," he said. I saw it. "What?" "I don't know," he muttered. "Just put it back under the logs. Like maybe that would undo something." Then he handed me the journal. "Put it back in the fire pit where you found it." I did. We didn't burn it. We left at sunrise. None of us said much on the hike back. We told the ranger the site felt off and someone might left trash out there. But here's the thing. A week later, Marcus texted me. Middle of the night. Whispering. He said the journal showed up in his backpack. Same burn marks. Same pages. He burned it for real that night in his backyard. Said he watched it, turned to ash. But a few nights later, he called me. It's watching me while I sleep. That was the last time I heard from him. He stopped answering texts, changed his number, moved out of state. And sometimes, when I'm camping alone, and the fire dies down, I swear I hear something outside the tent. Slow footsteps, pacing, waiting, and sometimes I think I see a shape just beyond the tree line, watching. We didn't hear it arrive. No footsteps. No zippers. No voices. Just woke up one morning, and there was a second tent right beside ours, silent, sealed, and never empty. This happened 3 summers ago, during a camping trip in Colorado with 3 friends, Ben, Drew, and Kayla. We were on our 3rd night out in the San Juan Mountains, in one of those remote hike-and-only sites that's not marked on public maps, but is known to locals. No cell signal, no rangers, no service roads, just trees, silence, and open sky. It was the kind of place where you didn't expect to see another soul for days. The first 2 nights were perfect clear stars, cold beer, and nothing but the sound of wind in the trees. But on the morning of the 3rd day, we noticed something strange. We even joked about it must be a ninja camper, Ben said. Same brand as mine, dark green, small for 1 person, but older. Worn and faded. We hadn't heard anything during the night. No voices. No footsteps. No headlights or firelight. A tent had been set up about 30 feet from ours. It was just there, like it had grown out of the earth overnight. At first, we thought it might belong to a solo hiker who came in late and didn't want to wake us. That seemed reasonable. But by midday, we started to feel uneasy. No one came out. The tent remained zipped shut. No rustling inside. No coughing, no movement. Just a still, almost waiting silence. We kept glancing over, expecting to see someone step out for water or a walk or anything, but the flap never moved. Drew eventually walked closer, maybe 10 feet from it, and called out, "Hey, you good in there?" Nothing, not even a shift in shadow. But now I could see the outline, someone sitting upright, facing our direction. Just pulled my sleeping bag tighter and shut my eyes, perfectly still. He stared at it for a long moment, then turned back to us with a forced grin. Creepy. In the middle of the night, just sitting there. Just this tension, like something was off about the space we were sharing. That night, none of us slept well. It wasn't fear, exactly. I remember waking up around 3 a.m. and glancing out of our tent's mesh window. The moon was bright, casting everything in silver. Just sitting in a kind of silent agreement that something wasn't right. Drew walked off into the woods for an hour. Ben kept checking the firewood pile even though it didn't need checking. Kayla kept humming under her breath like she was trying to drown something out. We all kept sneaking glances toward the tent, waiting for it to unzip, waiting to see who was inside. The other tent was still there, still zipped shut. But now there was a shape inside it, a silhouette sitting inside, not moving, not reacting. It hadn't been there earlier. I was sure of it. I didn't wake the others. I could hear my own breath, the crunch of gravel under my boots. Not 10 feet this time right in front. The next morning, the shape was still there. "I saw it too," Kayla whispered to me while we were boiling water for coffee. We didn't talk about it in front of the guys, but I could tell they were bothered too. But it never did. No sounds. No footsteps. Just that same frozen figure behind the nylon. By midday, we'd stopped speaking entirely. That silent, unmoving tent with someone inside that never left. Not the wind, just the space around me. Like the thing inside was pulling the warmth in. Around dusk, I snapped. I walked over to the tent and stood in front of it. The shape was still there. I said, "Hey," no answer. I said it louder. "Hey, are you alright in there?" We packed in near silence and hiked the 3 miles back to the trailhead by headlamp. No one looked back. Still nothing. That particular site isn't listed on any official trail maps. When I asked a ranger, he said that spot had been closed for years due to bear activity. I reached for the zipper, my hand hovered there, and I swear I felt the air get colder. And then, I kid you not, it leaned forward. Not a lot, just a few inches, but it leaned. I backed up, fast. Didn't unzip it, didn't speak. Just turned and walked away. We left that night. No fire, no dinner. I haven't gone camping since. I looked up reports later, tried to find if anyone else had seen something similar. Nothing. But there was no sign of bears. No tracks. No torn packs. Just that tent. I don't know what would have happened if I'd unzipped it. And I don't want to. All I know is it wasn't a person. And it wasn't camping.
On today's episode of The Noticer, we visit a hiker who's being followed. It was April Fool's Day, and I'd gotten my boyfriend Mark a pair of novelty sunglasses that made him look like Burt Reynolds. He loved them. They were one of his favorite pairs to wear while driving, so when he told me he wanted to go on a little drive in the country today, I wasn't surprised. She told me she was dropping by my apartment unannounced, because she was in the area and wanted to see how I was doing. She pulled out her purse and dumped it on the table. Inside lay a stack of old photographs. I didn't recognize him at first, but then I saw the way he stood and the slight hunch in his shoulders. It suddenly hit me. Mom wasn't just in these photos. She was in every photo. And if you looked closely, she was always in the exact same position. Sometimes she was holding my hand. There were times she was close enough to touch my shoulder. But in every single picture, her eyes were cast downward. Mom lived in a care home until she passed away from the disease. Feeling nostalgic, I poured them out on the table. They were mostly pictures of family gatherings and vacations. I scanned through them looking for one I recognized, but they all seemed strange to me. Then I came across one that stopped me cold. He'd wake up in the middle of the night screaming, "Help me," and then he'd pass out. He had trouble walking and his speech was slurred. I never understood what happened to him. The more I dug into it, the more I realized I might never know. It was a picture of my dad and I standing next to each other with a film camera. But when I looked at my dad's face, I didn't recognize him. He was younger, sure, but there was something else about him. Something was off. And it wasn't just his face. His posture was strangely hunched. And if you looked closely, it almost looked like his arm was pulling away from his body. But it was hard to grieve her loss because even before she was diagnosed, she was gone. The woman in the photos was my mother, but the woman in front of me wasn't. It listed the cause of death as complications from a serious back injury sustained in a car accident. But when I clicked on the link to read the report, I was redirected to a government website that said the record could not be found. I stared at the screen, stunned. The only car accident my dad ever had happened when I was a baby, and I was with him. When he was in the hospital, I visited him every day. The doctors told me he would recover, but he wouldn't be the same ever again. And they were right. She never looked at the camera, and whatever she was looking at seemed to scare her. I gasped, "Is that you, Mom?" Mom nodded slowly. "That's me." I thought I was looking at a poorly edited photograph. I checked the edges, finding the telltale white line indicating a copied image. There was no white line. It was just a weird perspective. Suddenly, the memories came flooding back. My dad was always stooped like that. He always complained about his back hurting, and I remembered the hushed tones whenever he left the room. Back problems, everyone would whisper. Bulging disc, others would add, "You must have been 5 or 6 years old here. Your father and I had just bought our first camera. We were so proud of ourselves." I turned the photo over and saw written on the back, Lake George. August 1983. Lake George was one of our vacation spots, and I could just about remember staying there. But something about the photo unsettled me. "These are yours," she said. "I found them in your things when I was cleaning your apartment after you moved in here." I looked at them confused. "What do you mean?" "I have these." Mom shook her head. But then I pointed out one photograph in particular that sent shivers down my spine. She began to cry and told me she needed to lie down. When I checked on her a few minutes later, I found her passed out on the floor. An ambulance took her to the hospital where she was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's. I was devastated for her and for me. We lost both of our parents within a span of a month. It was a picture of my sister and I playing in the sand at a beach in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Our parents divorced when I was 10, and this picture must have been taken shortly thereafter. In the photo, I was kneeling next to my sister watching the waves. My face was turned away from the camera, and my hair was covering my face. But if you looked closely, you could see one small part of me that Mom was hiding. The heart-shaped birthmark behind my ear. I didn't have that when I was little. Developed it after my 10th birthday. How could Mom have taken this picture months after I got the mark unless she was there when I got it? Nope, these are old, from when you were little. I recognized a few of the places in the pictures. We used to take vacations with my dad's side of the family every year, but I couldn't remember taking any of these particular photos, and I knew I would have remembered if I did. I asked Mom if she knew anything about them, but she claimed she'd only found them that day and had no idea. I told her I'd be happy to see her. We chatted for a while, and then she excused herself to use the bathroom. What I was surprised by, though, was the call I got 3 hours later from his father. He told me that Mark had gotten into a serious car accident and was in a coma in the hospital. I sped to the hospital and waited nervously for news. 4 days later, his father came out of the room, shaken and defeated. He told me that Mark had passed away, that he'd suffered a stroke as a result of the accident. He thanked me for visiting Mark and letting him know how much he loved his glasses, which Mark had apparently talked about nonstop in his final days. I couldn't help but smile sadly at the memory. We were all thankful for those final moments of happiness. I told Mark's dad I loved him too and left. A couple weeks later, I was still grieving, but settling into life without Mark. I got a call from my mother. When she returned, she told me she needed to show me something. As I studied the pictures, I realized there was someone in all of them standing in the background with a camera around his neck. I went into the kitchen to get a glass of water, staring blankly ahead. I confronted Mom about it. She tried to play it cool at first, claiming she just didn't like having her picture taken. Mom refused to answer my questions. After she was released from the hospital, one day, as I was sorting through Mom's belongings, I came across a box full of old negatives. For a split second, I pulled out my phone and searched for my dad's death certificate. I found it quickly. In the years that followed, he changed. He became quiet and withdrawn, snapping at us kids for no reason. Thank you for watching.